All right, we are live. Claire, welcome on the podcast.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome. And this is also an exciting episode because we get Pilot Ben back. And for those that watch video, he about 3 months ago he got an upgraded microphone. Before that, he had this big headset with a microphone, and today it's back.
It's back, and it's back because I'm recording this from Costa Rica. My first time in Costa Rica, and my wife's about to start a new job in a week or so. So this is a little fun employment trip that we decided on last minute. So I'm happy we're still able to make this happen because this is one of my favorite activities, and I get to do it from a different, special kind of place. So I'll kind of kick this off today. So people that have been following the podcast and just like my journey know that I've been teaching this course on Maven since, gosh, I think my first cohort went live July of last year. So I think it's coming up on a year and a half now. And I've run 10 cohorts. And we might talk about some of my experiences running my course, but one thing I haven't talked about is how I got pulled into teaching on Maven. And Claire is the short answer. So Claire reached out to me. I think part of your role, and one of the reasons that we're really excited to chat with you, is to prospect and to identify people that could be really interesting instructors on the Maven platform and to help get them comfortable. And I remember getting on our first call, and you had such a clear, focused kind of path for me to think about next steps and to think about whether Maven was a good fit for me. And I've just been extremely grateful for you specifically this whole time. So it's really fun that we get to do this on the podcast now. And hopefully it would be, if even one person chooses to launch a course on Maven because of us doing this together, I think that would be a really big win. But so maybe we'll just start with what's the kind of signal that made you reach out? Like, what do you look for when you're trying to find people that might be successful instructors on the platform?
Yeah. And just want to say it's been so fun working with you. I mean, I think even from the very beginning, it's always easy to spot instructors where I'm like, oh, we're going to have a great time. So it's been a pleasure the whole year and a half. But yeah, I think a couple patterns for what I look for. I think some interest in knowledge sharing is always great, right? Like, obviously, you have to have some credibility. I'm looking for operators who really built products and shipped them and led teams and gotten their hands dirty with the work. But a lot of really talented people have done that, right? And so the next level is, are you interested in sort of making your knowledge accessible for other people? And that could be, they've done speaking engagements before. That could be they're writing publicly. I love people with a Substack. But basically any interest in like, hey, I know that I'm an expert in this thing and I want to make that more accessible for people. I want to get back a little bit. And so those are two pretty big signals for me.
And I'm curious for Ben specifically, was there anything that kind of like piqued your interest? And I know it was like a year and a half ago. And I believe in terms of timing, like, was it, Ben, when you had just started doing fractional work, were you pushing interviews very hard? Like, was that like a thing you were doing, or you were still trying to figure out if that's how you're going to spend time meaningfully?
I was not pushing the interview stuff at all yet, because I remember, Clara, it's fun to compare memories, but I remember us having a conversation asking if there are any topics or any things that would be very interesting for me to teach about, like, that are at the intersection of something that I am very knowledgeable about and excited about, and that there might be demand. And I think I remember having two paths that I was thinking of. One was more about the interview. I'm like, I've been kind of doing this interview coaching stuff on the side. Maybe there's a there. But I think the second one was around user research or talking to, I think it might have been talking to customers. How to do user research?
Yeah.
What do you remember from that? Yeah.
I think when we first started chatting, you had just pivoted into more of a fractional role. I can't quite remember if you were like already doing it or you were like about to make that jump. But I remember we spent a lot of time debating which path to go down. And I think the external signal you were getting at the time was a lot of people were really interested and coming to you specifically for the interview piece. And I remember telling you, like, it's a tough topic. Like, it's a very, very like timely thing, right? You really have to catch people at the exact right moment, but you made it work. And I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah, I think a few things kind of came together at the right moment to kind of pull, because, you know, I tell people like whenever you're doing 0 to 1,
Mm-hmm.
finding product market fit, or for in the case of Maven, I think you guys talk a lot about, is it topic market fit?
Yeah, course
Is it
market fit, topic
course
market fit.
market fit?
Yeah.
I think you probably at some point start to feel some kind of pull.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, actually, both of you played an interesting role at the same exact moment in pulling me into the interview space, because Mark, you and I had talked about, I think that I was starting to think about running a course. And then we did a poll in the Supra community asking if people would be interested in joining like a live Q&A or a roundtable where I basically do this talk about these two interview types. And it got like 30 people, I think, like reacted that they wanted to do it. And that forced my hand to put together the presentation. And then once that went well, I think I came back to Claire and I was like, hey, I just did this presentation. I could probably clean it up a little bit, and then it would be a really
Mm-hmm.
good lightning lesson, if I'm not mistaken. I think, and then right around that time, my first Lenny guest post was getting
Yeah.
ready to go live. So
Yeah.
all that kind of came together, and the question became like, where do I send all this traffic from this
Yeah.
Lenny guest post? And it became like, and then I filled up my first lightning lesson with I think like 700 signups or something, which felt like, oh my God, 700 people. And I guess the rest is history from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're a great example of something that is like a little counterintuitive, but I'm always telling instructors, like, you are always going to have a better sense of the market demand than we are. You know, like, I can, from a very high level, give you patterns of success around what's worked, but you are the person who's kind of like, you're on the ground, you're getting all of this feedback from the people in your network and people who are like your peers or a few years junior to you. So you will always have a much keener sense, I think, of what people really want from you. And so I remember being like a little skeptical about the interviews. I told you it was going to be like hard to catch people like right in the moment, but you were like, nope, I've got market demand here. I validated it. And I said, I 100% like, I think you should run with it. I think you should go for it. So I do think that it's, you know, a little bit counterintuitive where everyone always is like, oh, you must have so much visibility into the demand. And, you know, we do have a pretty good sense of what topics generally tend to work. We have a good sense of what stories are happening, but for individual instructors, like, you will always have a better sense. So.
Yeah. So to Mark's question, do you remember? Was it just like me having posted a bunch on LinkedIn and having a Substack and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
being out there in the world, and you're like, we were looking for more product courses. This is
yeah,
a product person, so I should reach out. Like that kind of thing.
yeah. It was a little bit of like, you know, I'd noticed that you were starting to do a little bit of public writing and speaking. And, you know, I think there was a little bit around like you had started writing more publicly. You had started sharing some of your thoughts on LinkedIn. And I think I probably saw that you had just started doing a fractional role or advisory, or basically left your full-time role. So I was like, okay, you know, bandwidth is there. And then generally, like, product is always, you know, a great category for us. We see tons and tons of demand for product courses. So yeah, I think that's that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm also like sure like okay he had a the Meta logo in there and on like other
Yeah,
great companies too. So I think that also probably I'm guessing helps too like in terms of like driving
definitely.
them on. And I know like I've noticed like in the lighting lessons that you guys have like a lot of the guests are encouraged to add like the logos in there
Yeah,
as well, and same with the courses too.
totally.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's true. I think that, you know, we think about credibility the same way a student does, where it's like, how easy is it going to be for a student to evaluate that this person is credible? And, you know, I don't think that that means that you can't be successful if you don't have great logos, but it's a heuristic, right? Like,
yeah, I mean I think that's why like I mean Goku, like we had a Goku Roger on like it was like 4 episodes ago, and he was just basically saying like when you pick a company or you choose where you're gonna work on next, like it is kind of important to choose a company that has like a strong trajectory that's gonna go somewhere, because yeah, social proof branding that makes a
totally.
huge difference, not just for in this case not just for your career or where you're gonna
Yeah.
land next, but
Yeah.
also like to open opportunities like potentially getting reached out
Yeah.
for teaching a course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe yeah, shifting gears a little bit, like this might be my perception, but and maybe because I'm more plugged into the space, but I feel like maybe in the last like year and a half, like product just courses in general have blown up, right? Like in terms of I think
Mhm.
like AI maybe is driving some of it,
Yeah.
but also I think like there's platforms now like Maven. So I'm curious, like why is now a great time for teaching, and what has changed? Why is there way more supply?
Yeah, that's such a good question. You're absolutely right. I mean, like, for what it's worth, you know, Maven, we're now at like a 50 million run rate, and we've definitely seen that
Wow.
like propelled by a lot of the interest in AI. I think a couple things. Like, number one, I think one big societal shift that AI is driving is that people are remembering that learning never stops, right? Like, I think people forget that because there aren't really like any institutionalized ways to learn after university. Once you're in the workforce, you sort of, you're not always really investing in learning anymore. And I think AI was like the first big thing where people were like, oh my God, like I have to keep learning. There's this completely new technology that I really have to be up to date on. And so across every function, I think that people are feeling a lot more urgency about learning. I will say, product people are amazing because product has such an culture of learning inherently. Like I feel like PMs are very, very curious, always trying to learn more. So y'all have had a much more a legacy like of continuing to learn. But I think now that it's kind of like reaching the other functions as well. But yeah, I think that teaching is particularly interesting right now for a couple of reasons, right? I do think that to be a successful instructor, you have to have a little bit of this builder mentality because the course is, it's a product that you're building. And I think what's really exciting about it is like, number one, people are finding that the scrappiness quality, the builder mentality that is coming back into fashion, right? Like you see top product leaders, the best companies are sort of hiring for product leaders who are a little bit entrepreneurial. Everyone says they're looking for a builder. People want people who can be like player coaches. And so that general quality of being a builder is both like really core to running a good course. And it's something that is, very popular again, right? It's something that everyone's looking for. And then I just think the other piece is I think people are starting to understand the value of being easy to remember and easy to recommend to others, right? And so the element of like having a little bit of personal visibility, personal brand, I think people are starting to realize that it's a really, really high leverage thing to have. And it's becoming more important and useful than it is becoming ick. And so I think a course is sort of like it's sort of symbiotic to like being a little bit more visible, right? Like you're basically saying like, I'm an expert in this thing and I'm going to make myself more visible as an expert in this thing. And so I think that's kind of where some of the uptick in interest is coming from.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think so there's like AI propelling people to want to learn more. There is people realizing that having a personal brand that in a non-ick cringe way, but in a asset, like I have an asset that I'm
Right.
building kind of way is what it feels like to
Yeah.
me. And the asset is my name. And I think a lot of people are realizing that that's a really, like Colin's a good example. Colin Matthews, he's got brand association in my head with like AI prototyping and
Yeah.
like vibe coding, and Aman
Totally.
Khan has a brand association in my head with like evals, and
Yeah.
Tal has an association in my head with like AI tinkering and productivity, right? And like I think everyone's got their kind of like personal name associated with a space, and then I think that creates a lot of optionality, and it is an asset that can keep growing.
Yeah.
The thing I'll add as maybe a third big reason I think a lot of people are, just from what I hear from people when they reach out to me and they're interested in exploring starting a course, that is not those first two, is this idea that the historical employment contract with companies is really shifting, and people no longer believe that they can kind of make, I don't want to say cruise to retirement, but like that the path towards
Yeah.
the next 20 years, 15, 20 years of their career
Yeah.
no longer looks certain the way that they thought it would be 5 years ago. And they're kind of
Totally.
worried about not just becoming stale from a skilling perspective, but they're just like, is there even going to be like, is this job, can I even count on this relationship with an employer anymore? Do I need to come up with a backup option or like a plan B for the rest of my career? And a lot of
Yeah.
people are thinking about that. I would be surprised if that's not maybe the number one reason a lot of people are think about starting a course is I need to start to develop my exit path from like traditional corporate life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like one of the streams that you can think about along with like consulting and advising. And, there are so many other paths that people are sort of considering. But I do think that, we're generally seeing overarching like the creator economy has sort of like fueled all of these people who are earning livings off of different like non 9 to 5 careers, right? And so I think it's finally starting to leak into tech a little bit where it's like, actually, your expertise is worth something, and that can be something that provides a little bit more stability outside of your 9 to 5, opens up optionality if you want to be spending your time doing other things. But yeah, Mark, I'm kind of curious, like, have you noticed this pattern with folks in your super community? Like, what's the split on people who are thinking about building other options outside of their 9 to 5?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are thinking of just diversifying their income streams. And
Yeah.
I think kind of like the term that gets thrown around is like portfolio career.
Yeah.
And I think at the very least, like there's definitely a lot of people that are either do some fractional work on the side or maybe some advising either for a retainer or, you know, some equity. And some people do like coaching to more junior people. So I think there's definitely like, yeah, just I think a worry that, yeah, like it just, you never know when, you know, if my company is going to do some layoffs. So I just want to make sure that I'm ahead of the curve if that happens and that I have other options and at least like have some like income that will sustain me.
Totally.
So I think that's definitely top of mind. And then there's some other people that are just like kind of like more radical on the other side, or like, actually, no, like I think my best use of time is like kind of going all in on this company and growing it. And then that's going to lead to my promotion and that's going to lead to the big pay bump, or maybe that's going to lead to like my equity being worth something. I've definitely seen the two camps, but I've definitely seen more and more growing interest around either advising companies or doing fractional work. So that definitely resonates.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think that they're totally in contrast with each other. Like, I think something that I do pretty frequently hear from operators is, and I really believe this, like, I really believe that codifying your knowledge and teaching it in some ways makes you a better operator, right? Like when I'm trying to understand something new, I will explain it back to someone to make sure that I've really gotten the grasp of it. And I think teaching is that at scale where, you know, you're writing and documenting what you've learned and figuring out how to put it in a format that's going to resonate for others. And I think in that process, you sort of have to sharpen your understanding of why something worked and, you know, what are the nuances in all of your experiences that affected success versus failure. And I think that all the reps of explaining these topics to students, and students will surface edge cases that are happening in their company that they want your feedback on. I think it just becomes this very cool virtuous cycle where, you know, you build and then you teach what you learn and then you build, you know, with what you learned teaching, and then you add those new insights to your course. And I think it does like become a little bit of this like reinforcement. But yeah, I mean, I think that you can absolutely be a great instructor and still be super committed to being a full-time operator, just because, you know, I really just think codifying your knowledge is like a net positive practice, regardless of what you do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm curious. I mean, one thing that we kind of like touch slightly on, but I think like it's an important part is okay, like how much money can you make with these courses, right? And I think that's like a question. And I think I'm sure the answer is like, you know, it probably like gradually goes up as you become, you know, more known. But yeah, I'm curious, like how do you see like from the moment someone starts, right? And maybe I know like it's probably a very different example, like someone who already has a big brand who is, you know, doing this full time versus someone who like maybe is more of an operator. But yeah, how should people think about the money element? And
I would say that, you know, you can absolutely be very successful without a massive distribution. Like I do think a lot of people tend to think like, oh, you need to have a massive LinkedIn following in order to be successful. And I think there are like really two inputs to being super successful, right? The two inputs are like, how good is your course topic, right? Positioning, right? Like, do you have something that's really compelling for people to learn? Is there urgency around it? And then the second piece is distribution. And so they're compounding, right? One, having a really strong topic means that you can be successful with not as big of an audience and vice versa. But I do think that they're both important inputs. But yeah, like in terms of success, we have over 10 instructors who are making over $1 million on the platform just off their courses. And the average instructor at this point is making 6 figures annually from their course. So it is a very, very it is very, very doable to build a meaningful second income stream off your course. And I'm talking about instructors who are maybe running their courses like quarterly. This isn't like I have to run a course every month to hit that. You know, you can really achieve that if you're running like one very good course once a quarter. So it's doable.
So it sounds like there's almost like two elements, right? There's if you pick a really good course, right? Like the market's going to just pull it from you. And I'm sure like there's like a lot of those like AI topics where people are like, oh shit, like that sounds great. And even if you're not a celebrity, if like you pick the right topic, you're probably going to have a lot of people sign up. And then the other one is like people who are just like world-class at distribution, right? Like they know how to get the right landing lessons. Maybe they do some ads. Maybe they have mastered the funnel from LinkedIn to newsletter to,
I mean,
So that
what's funny about that is I actually don't even think you need to be world class at distribution. Like, if you have a great topic, the first piece you mentioned, I do think there's a pipeline where you start with this great topic and then you get picked up by distribution channels who want to hear more about this topic and how you're approaching it because they saw you teaching on Maven or because they saw you starting to run lightning lessons. Like, that's definitely happened for a couple of our instructors where they would run a lightning lesson or start teaching, and then, you know, they would get on like Peter Yang or Akash or Lenny guest posts, things like that. So that's definitely like one route, which is why I always think that like even distribution is a little bit downstream of excellent positioning. But then even like on the distribution side, like I don't even think you have to be a world class marketer. Like the thing that I look for in instructors is, do you have a little bit of marketing sense, right? Do you vaguely understand how like a marketing funnel works? Do you understand that you have to build trust with students? Do you have a sense for what stories matter and what drives students, and you know what questions they're going to have and what fears they're addressing with your course and what the urgency is? You know, I don't even think that, you know, most of our instructors are marketers by trade, and many of them are still very successful. So marketing instinct, great. You know, being world class, not that necessary.
Yeah, I will say Maven has built a really helpful Slack community for the instructors, and it's quite active. And there's a lot of instructors that support each other and give feedback on like their landing pages and positioning. And the Maven team is just really good at, I mean, I think it was you and Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken, who really held my hand as I kind of got my course off the ground, Claire, and helped me find like the title and like the hook. You know, it's like anyone that's ever designed like a website, you realize you've got your hero at the top and you got to catch people in the hero, and they're not going to scroll to learn more if you don't really like hook them in the hero. And so that's like, I think a lot of my suspicion is that that is a very important piece that people have to learn to start to get comfortable with from a marketing perspective. And then the landing page is definitely it's where you can either really sell them on why they want to join, or it's where you lose them because you come off in a way that just doesn't appeal to them.
Yeah.
And another observation that I've had is that my there's something counterintuitive, which is, you know, let's take a topic like vibe coding. I don't teach a course in vibe coding. Colin does. We're friends. There's plenty of other people that teach great, I'm sure, great courses in vibe coding. And what you'd expect is there to be a little bit of a zero sum game being played amongst these instructors. But what seems counterintuitive is that the more people, and I know Goggins talked about this publicly too, but
Yeah.
by the way, for the audience, Goggin runs Maven. The more courses I think that pop up in a given topic, the more it almost grows the pie around that topic on the platform.
Yeah.
And then what seems to happen is people will organically, like potential students will organically get pulled into one of the courses because they just have an affinity, like some kind of attraction with an instructor.
Yes.
And they want to learn from that person.
Yeah.
And what always comes to mind to me when I hear that, because it's counterintuitive, is thinking back to like my favorite teachers as a student in high school or in college. It was the reason they were my favorite classes is because of the instructor.
Yeah.
It's like the topic had to have something interesting to it, but you could have a really interesting instructor that you love their style of teaching.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you'll want to learn whatever they'll teach. You just like, I want to learn from this person. And then there's topics that are super, super good, but the instructor, no matter what, you're just like, man, like I'm bored, or like, this is not engaging.
Yeah.
So I think the positioning is a piece, but I also think the second piece really is getting out there so that the people who like your just energy, like your style, will want you versus the other instructors.
Completely agree. I think that something that people forget is that the market is massive, right? Like if you think about all of the people in the world or the US or North America or whatever who want to learn AI, like there are millions, right? But a cohort-based course, a really successful cohort is 25 people. So if you're running that 4 times a year, you could be really successful with 100 students per year. And that's, you know, that's a really, really small pie, like piece of a pie that's like only growing. So yeah, it is like very counterintuitive, but we have actually found that the data shows us that, you know, we have 4 AIPM certification courses and all of them have gotten more successful since the second and the third and the fourth launched. But I think that people undervalue how much chemistry with the instructor matters. Like this is why we encourage lightning lessons so much. This is why, you know, even when you're filtering for jobs, when you look at your manager, when you look at your CEO, when you look at your mentors, like you're picking people based on your chemistry with them, right? Like you want somebody who you feel like really understands you. You want somebody who explains things in a way that makes sense to you. That is a huge differentiator for instructors. And I think people forget that. But yeah, I mean, there are so many different people who are teaching various versions of communication courses, for example, right? But I have always preferred Wes's style for myself because that's how I internalize information. She breaks things down in a way where I'm like, oh yeah, that is very compatible with how I already think about things. And so when I was looking for a course like that, like I went to her first. And I think that's, just broadly true. So I love when instructors show a little personality on their landing page. I think it's really important. I think they should all do more of it.
Yeah, and if someone's listening, either whether they're an existing instructor looking to do more marketing or someone thinking about testing the waters or starting a course, one thing that was super surprising to me is, by the way, Claire also helped me organize that blockbuster lightning lesson earlier this year with Chantal and with Nikki and Stephanie. And one thing I did like less than 10% of the talking in that lightning lesson, 90% was done by the panel. And I still had multiple people end up signing up for my course after that, inciting that lightning lesson was the reason they wanted to take the course, because they just felt like the way I facilitated the panel, like they just felt like there was something about the way I communicated my energy that made them want to come and learn this interview prep topic from me. So it's not even like every lightning lesson has to be you showcasing, your mastery of your topic that you teach. It's just like, it's really about being, attracting the people that want to learn from you.
Yeah. Also, one, that was so fun. I think so highly of Chantal, Stephanie, and Nikki. And yeah, I think that that's true, right? Like I've always told you, a strength of yours is like you are an amazing facilitator. You're a great speaker. I think it really comes through in the way that you interact with panelists and the questions you choose to ask and the way you dig into their thinking. And I think even that, like, it's, even when you're like, it's the same as like interviewing or hiring. Like you talk to someone, you get a sense of their energy, you get a sense of how they think and how they break down ideas. And all of that I think is really conducive to knowing whether this is someone I want to learn from or not. So yeah.
Yeah. I also want to give Maven kudos for making webinars cool again. Just that was a genius. That was a genius, like, rebrand from webinar to lighting lessons.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that when I started talking to you, Claire, I believe lightning lessons were brand new, right? Like how long had they been around?
Yeah. I mean, they're probably only like a year and a half old. They really are pretty new. We only started doing them sometime in 2024. But yeah, that's so funny that you say that because we actually actively try not to say webinar. But yes, absolutely a rebrand, and they're great.
Well, what's so cool about them is that up until that point, you'd used a term that I think, a lot of people know, which is like lead magnet, which is create some kind of free resource that's going to allow people to, get the content from you in return for an email. And that's how you build your list. And then you guys figured out that if we could have someone teach a free lightning lesson for 30, 45 minutes about a specific topic, whether it's their course or something else. Yeah. And then people can like sign up, and then you don't just get one email at a time. Now you're getting hundreds. Sometimes like the lightning lesson with Nikki, Chantal, and Stephanie doubled my mailing list on Maven to like, it added, I think like 6,000 emails or something to it.
That's wild.
Which is, it's nuts. Right. And then, so I think you guys figured out that there's this really interesting connection. It's almost like perfectly greasing the flywheel. Is more lightning lessons gets more credibility, more emails, more free value to students. Yeah. And then, the next thing that Marc and I are excited to test is there a way to almost like amp it up even more and connect lightning lessons the way we do this podcast? Because I think that's something we've talked about, Claire, one-on-one, but I think there's a evolution. Let's just say the current state of lightning lessons, I suspect, and webinars in general, is not going to be where it is right now. I think it's going to keep evolving, and something tells me that, there's going to be some connection with podcasting too at some point, but we shall see. That's another hypothesis I just have about the market that we'll validate.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most fun part of it is like, of course, it's a great way to give away your knowledge for free, but I also think it's such a faster way to get from insight to sharing, right? Like things are changing so fast in the ecosystem right now. Like you're seeing new trends pop up all the time. You're doing something at work that's going to be really applicable to a problem that other people are also having. Cause if you're moving at the cutting edge, you kind of like, there's not a lot of precedent, right? And I think the format is just a really fun way for people to say like, oh, I learned and tested this thing really recently. Like, I want to talk about how it worked for my company and see how I can turn that into something that's like really value add for people who are listening, but also, as you mentioned, a great, demand gen tactic. And that's like part of one of the most fun pieces of my job is getting to go find the stories like as they're happening and then being like, hey, you should talk more about this. This would be really interesting. Like, I remember, I think Hillary put something out about her AI management, the way that she was testing using AI for managing people at Whoop. And I think it was literally within 2 hours, I emailed her and I was like, hey, are you interested in teaching this? And that was like really fun because I was like, wow, this is so relevant. I'm already seeing so many people asking about this. Thank God you put this out into the universe. So now I can be in your inbox and say, hey, there are more people who want to hear this from you. So that was very fun.
I'm curious, what is your workflow? Like, are you just on LinkedIn all the time and like, and like read, like, are you searching for people? Like what, like how do, like, for example, I mean, I'm sure like, for example, like that particular like Hillary post, like probably went viral or good, but I'm curious, like, yeah, how do you, like, is there any like keywords you're searching for? Are you just like paying attention to your feed? Like what are you doing?
It's such a good question. I would say for the sourcing part of my work, which has dramatically decreased over the last year, I think back in 2023 and 2024, when we were trying to like kickstart the supply side of the marketplace flywheel, I was doing a lot more, manual work on this front. Now we kind of have a wheel that rolls. We have a lot more inbound, we can be a lot more top down about finding instructors. I'm not doing as much of that anymore. The way that I keep a pulse on those stories specifically though, is I'll always try to dedicate like 30 to 45 minutes in the morning for reading. So either I'm reading X, I'm reading LinkedIn, I'm reading Substacks that I follow, just kind of keeping a pulse on what's going on. And it's during that time that I find the most ad hoc people that I want to reach out to. So yeah, like keeping tabs on like Lenny's podcast, Claire Vo, right? Like all these sources of TBPN, like all these great sources of like tech news, like that's my dedicated like search time. And otherwise I try to touch grass, but it is pretty mandatory to keep a pulse on what's going on. So my reading time is really important.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please check out the links in the show notes to support the podcast. Marc and I do this out of love, but to keep it going, we also need your support. Thanks, and now back to the episode.
And usually what triggers that reaction that you had with Hillary of like, oh, like this will be an amazing course, or like, oh, there's someone special here. Is it like just like a topic that you feel like Maven hasn't covered? Is it the way they are able to articulate that problem? Is it just like gut feeling?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Honestly, at this point, it's instinct more than anything. But if I really dig into that and try to explain it, I think it's two things. Number one, there's so much slop out there, and I read enough where I'm like pretty fast. I can be like, okay, this is like really bad. Like I look at one hook and I'm like, I'm done reading this. And so I think any pattern break there is immediately like oh, ding, like interesting. I think the way that people write, the quality of people's writing actually really matters. Like I don't know if it's a stretch to say that clear writers are clear thinkers, but if the post is well written and well explained and follows a great like narrative flow, that, of course is interesting to me. And then I think just like over time, we've sort of gotten a sense of like what is interesting for people just based on what we know about the problems that people are solving, right? So with Hillary, I thought her post was really interesting because it's one part, how do I use AI for this big problem that there are a lot of people managers out there, right? But I also think that part of her post, as I recall, touched a little bit on even the adoption of AI across a team. And that's something that I know a lot of product leaders are thinking about where, if you're hiring a product leader to come in and be the AI evangelist for your company, part of that work is going to be, okay, how do I encourage my reports to use this as like a team workflow rather than just like one person who's in Claude doing things, So yeah, it's a little bit instinct and a little bit what we've known about the space.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the Whoop is a great, is a great company name, a great logo. So there's like some brand recognition, and also Hillary's just like an incredible writer. Like I think she's an English major, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
or
fun.
literature, English. I think she said that on Lenny's, right? Marc, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. We'll have to double check. But
I'll have to double check. Sorry, Hillary, if I misrepresented that. But no, I think I think she's deep into because she mentioned reading a lot and all the classics. But yeah, I think great. Yeah, Claire, I think you're right. I think great writing or clear writing is probably a sign of clear thinking.
Hmm.
Um, Compelling writing is a sign of interesting thinking, maybe.
Yeah.
A marketing instinct too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to
Yeah.
write a hook that makes you stop scrolling and want to read it is probably a little bit of an early leading indicator of some marketing savviness.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I love reading Hillary's Substack. I think it's great. And again, like I love looking at people who are already writing on Substack. I tell a lot of instructors if they haven't already, they should go start writing on Substack as like a way to build that muscle. But yeah, I mean, huge fan of good writers. I was also a writing minor, and so I always have a little bit of a soft spot. So maybe that's a new criteria. English majors, please apply.
Yeah, and for
Nice.
those, we should totally plug your Substack also in the show notes because you might not write it. You don't write as often as I'd love to see you write because I think you're really good at writing. But what got you into your Substack recently, and how are you doing anything to try to make that more of a ritual, more of an ongoing habit?
It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually just started writing about my work and less about my personal life, and I think that's funny because it did very much come from a place of dog fooding the advice that I'm giving to instructors. I'm always like, "Oh, you should start writing," and finally, I was like, "Okay, it's probably time for me to take my own guidance." So yeah, I'm trying to write a little bit more just about what I've learned. Thinking about acquisition at Maven, what success looks like, what's counterintuitive about it, why people should teach. And I'm excited to do a little bit more of that. But yeah, I mean, I think you correctly identified that for most instructors or operators I talk to, and for me as well, the really hard part is just like putting stuff into the world and getting used to doing that. And I think it's a good forcing function. Like I think at some point you just have to bite the bullet and say, okay, I'm going to start putting my ideas out into public. I'm going to make it easier for people to know what I think and know what I'm good at. And I guess I'm doing it too.
I'm curious, do you use AI for any part of the writing
Oh, that's a good
workflow?
question. Yeah. Small plug. I am looking for anybody who wants to teach an AI for writing course. So if you're doing it and you're doing it really well, email me. But I think it's such an interesting question because, like, I really value my own voice. I think it's my favorite part of writing. I don't ever want to lose that. And I get very nervous that AI is going to mess that up. Honestly, the way that I use AI is if I'm thinking about the outline or the narrative structure, I'll say, like, hey, I want to talk about this topic. I'm thinking about XYZ bullet points. Like, what do you think is missing? What do you think of the narrative flow? Any like immediate thoughts on the structure? So I'll kind of have a conversation with Claude and just be like, yeah, what do you think? As like a thought partner. Sometimes I'll also, if I'm like, oh, I know there's a word I want to use here. I'm really particular about my diction, but I can't remember it. I'll go to Claude and I'll be like, I'm looking for that word. That means this thing and this. And they'll be like, oh, okay, this might be what you're thinking of. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I want. So every so often I'll use it. Sometimes I'll feed my writing in and say, like, hey, I've generally been told I could stand to be more concise. What do you think? And sometimes I'll take those notes. Sometimes I like to leave like the human element in. But that's kind of how I've been using AI. I'm curious as to like how you use AI because Ben, you're always putting out really great social content. Mark, you too. So how has it factored into your progress? What can I learn there?
Yeah, Mark, you go ahead. I'll piggyback.
Yeah, I've probably gone too extreme, and I think I need to dial it back a bit. It's just to
What do you
be
mean by
totally, let's put it that way. Mark is not spending enough time typing. I've gone full voice mode,
Oh, I love voice mode though.
and but the one thing that I'll say is so the way I use I mainly do so some context. I mainly do my writing on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think that it's I try to find a balance of like my goal is to every post that I do has some sort of value that people can get out of it. Like that to me is like a prerequisite, and I don't think I'm willing to compromise on that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also understand that there is an algorithm that makes some posts go more viral than others, and I've been collecting data basically for the last like few years. So basically, I have like a Claude project with it's always up to date with my top 50 performing posts, and I update it every month.
Yeah.
And then usually the way it works when I do a post, I'll just start talking about what I want to write, kind of how I want to structure it, and then I'll be like, hey, if you're gonna plan it, give me the outline. Then I'll basically like give it feedback, and then once we have the outline, then I'll be okay, like draft the first version. based on like my style. Because basically, like before I started doing this, I maybe started with like 100 posts that I read written on LinkedIn, all by myself, all human. And then yeah, after it drives, I'll give it some more voice feedback on the initial drafts. Then when I feel like there's a draft that's like close enough to mine, I'll copy and then paste it into LinkedIn, and then I'll start like editing some elements to like humanify it, if that's the right word or a word at all. And then sometimes I ask it for feedback or for ideas where I think that they'll do well. I've actually found like Claude or ChatGPT not to be that good at ideas because like they just don't really have that instinct that you were mentioning of like, oh, this is going to be interesting to people. Well, I'm very dialed into that because I'm talking to like product leaders all the time.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting parts of Marc's workflow, I think I don't know, unless I just missed it, but I don't think you mentioned this specifically, is the fact that you write all of your posts for the week at the start of the week.
Yeah.
So that's that. I don't know if I know anyone else that is as disciplined as you are about, what is it, every Monday?
Every Sunday. Yeah.
Sunday.
I'm basically, there's almost like two modes of writing. One is like the ideation, like coming up with good ideas to write about. So actually like usually on Fridays or Saturday, I'll start planning. Usually, sometimes I even do it for the entire month. Be like, hey, for the next 30 days, because I post every day. So here are some ideas that I'm going to do. Some of them are repeating themes or kind of like, subtopics that I cover like every Monday or every Tuesday. And so then, that will be one day where all I do is kind of using my creative like ideas that I think will resonate. I'll look through either Q&As that we've done or like the Supra Slack, like meeting notes that I've taken from people. And then on every Sunday, I block basically like an hour and a half, and I write all my posts from one go. And the reason for that, I'm just a little bit of like a productivity nut, and I hate kind of like the time that I waste to get like my juices flowing and the activation energy of writing. So I feel like when I'm on the flow, I'm like, I just want to get it all done. Yeah. And I just schedule them for the entire week.
Yeah. I think that discipline's amazing. I find that honestly deep writing time. I used to think that maybe I could do it where I could do like, 30 minutes every day and that'd be really helpful. But either I'm sitting down and it's, nothing's cooking up here, or I've hit 30 minutes and I'm like, oh, but I have so much more to go. And I don't want to stop now. So I do think ultimately I'm kind of on the team of, you got to just get it done when you're in flow state and get all your writing out.
Yeah. I've started, so I can't do what Marc does. First of all, because my weekends I can't get any focus blocks on the weekend because of family time, but I've started trying to block. So I don't allow anyone to schedule time with me during the week in the mornings. So my mornings are always mine to do what I want with. And lately I've been finding that carving out at least one full hour every morning to write is, people are like, an hour every morning? That's like a lot of time. But what I've been finding is the quality of the writing goes up proportionately, for me at least, what it feels like, with the amount of time that I give it. And then there's diminishing returns after a certain point. But I think if I can take a full hour to flesh out an idea, and by the end of that hour I have a LinkedIn post that's like, I'm gonna release it, and I know that with some slight tweaking could also make it into an email that I send to my entire waitlist on Maven, that's basically my marketing activity for the day. So the question is like, how much is it worth to do marketing every day? And I think writing I should spend at least an hour a day on marketing, is kind of my take. So yeah, I spend that time, and I'm experimenting with different ways of doing it, but my heart has to be in that post for me to prioritize it that morning. And what I've been landing on as a workflow is I basically give the same exact prompt to Claude and ChatGPT and spin them up in parallel with each other. And whichever one of them comes up with the first version I like more is the one where I basically continue with it. And then I treat the first.
Ben, so question there. Do you have like a writing project where they have all the context and all of your like previous topics, or is it just like a blank slate? And I guess like ChatGPT has memory, right?
Well, apparently Claude has memory now too, but I'm still maybe a little less trustworthy of it.
Same.
In ChatGPT, I started a new chat. In Claude, I have a LinkedIn posts project, Claude project. So that's the starting point for each. And basically getting the initial prompt right is where a lot of the clarity, people, when we talk about like writing is like clear writing is a sign of clear thinking. To me, giving something to the LLM that has enough direction that what you get initially is even remotely interesting, is I think where a lot of the art is. And Claire, just for context, a lot of the writing that Marc and I do on LinkedIn these days is related to, like, for example, our podcasts. So every time we do a podcast, like when we're promoting this episode we do with you, each of us is going to be looking through that transcript that we have after every recording and asking ourselves, what do I want to grab from this transcript into a post? And there's so many angles you could go. There's like maybe a specific hot take that someone shared on the episode that we could purpose into a post. Maybe it's a light bulb moment that one of us had during the conversation because we never explored that before. Maybe it's like a meta post about the gratitude to be able to have this kind of conversation or some implications of a conversation. So there's that's the part that I actually find it to be really interesting to look back at each of these conversations we have and be like, what did I actually take away from that? What was like the thing? What was like and what's funny is we never share those with each other. So Marc and I don't like read each other's drafts or anything. So when we're both promoting an episode, we get an interesting, fresh look at what the other person thought was most interesting about that episode. And Marc's takeaways are like 90% of the time different, or like the main thing that he chooses to talk about is different than the main thing I choose to talk about. It's not always the same thing.
Interesting. That's so interesting. It would be really fun to see how you two compare on what you pull from this. So I'm very excited to see that. But I think that's right. Like, I think the human taste piece of what actually resonated for people, or like what were the eyes light up moments, I think that's something that I like to do. And then, if I'm ever processing like a podcast or like a panel recording or something like that, even as we're going through the panel or like whatever it is, if it's a lightning lesson, as it's happening, I will be taking notes around, oh, this moment was really high energy, or this was a particularly salient question or something like that. And I will generally include that as part of my instructions, where I'll say like, hey, I really want to focus on XYZ points in the transcript. Like, can you pull insights from that? But I do prefer to keep the human element of like, I'm going to pick out the things that I think were interesting. You're welcome to suggest others that you think I missed. But for the most part, like, here's what I think.
Yeah, I don't see a world where like you can just write LinkedIn posts or whatever without a human in the loop. Like, I just like nothing good is going to come out of that.
What's really interesting though that I've noticed is that when I use AI to help me write, I think it's actually gotten it's not great at coming up with a hook. So I think the hooks that the AI gives me are generally not compelling. But somewhere in the post that it drafts, I generally find something that's like 90% of a hook. And so something I like to talk a lot about with my friend Alex, who's a great designer that I do stuff with, is like a lot of the job of product and design and some of these startups we've been in is to like make sure you're having the right conversation with like the CEO or the founder. It's less about like the idea you're presenting being the correct idea, and it's more about getting the right conversation to happen. And so a lot of how I use AI these days is to almost like make sure the right conversation's happening, because the moment that it gives me something to look at, I'm like, I hate that post. And the reason I hate it is because XYZ is missing, or it's about A when it should be about B, right? And so it's just getting that game of ping pong started, I think, is half the battle.
Yeah, it's like combating that like blank page syndrome almost. Like, it's just it shortcuts the activation energy. I know we got a little bit derailed on like the main topic, but I think in the beginning of the conversation, we made some very compelling points of the benefits of teaching a course, right? Like, the brand, going deep into something that you care about, obviously like the financial gains as well. But so I think, if I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, I'm sold. I think teaching a course is a good idea. I think probably the next set of questions that I would have, like, am I good enough? Like, do I have a topic that I'm an expert on? And then like, wait, is my company going to be cool with this? So maybe let's hit some of those objections so we can move to the next stage.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, so am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be successful? I always say yes, because I think people forget how much they know that other people don't. Like, I am very junior compared to some of the operators that I talk to. But when we have conversations about, it's the same series of questions over and over. It's so, not basic, but they're the same foundations. And so you forget how much of like what you've honed over your experience doing. And courses like are much more niche than I think the average person thinks, right? You're not designing a college curriculum that's going to be 8 weeks long on like product management 201 and the entirety of that. You're solving like a really short tactical problem for someone, right? It's like 2 weeks, 4 live sessions, 6 to 8 live hours total, and you're just trying to say like, okay, if I'm working with somebody who's 3 to 5 years junior to me and I want to get them from point A to point B, you figure out what point A is, you figure out what point B is. Like, here's what I'm going to teach. It's just going to be like my opinion on what matters, my opinion on what's high leverage, on what's going to be the most impactful thing that they can learn in order to take them to the next step. And that's the problem I'm solving for them. So I think courses can be like much more niche than people remember. And I think that's a pretty common point I'm having to make to instructors, where it's like, you are not teaching, the ocean of the world around this one thing. Like, you are just solving one specific problem for people. And then, yeah, on the company thing, like, yeah, it makes sense, right? It's tough to think about, I'm spending some of my time here. Generally, honestly, I think companies really value the brand exposure that comes with a course, because every company wants to be known for having great talent, right? Like, talent density is a proxy for like success in a lot of ways. And so if you're a company and you can say like, oh, we have the leading experts on growth, we have the person who's like best known for PLG in the world, we have some of the most craft oriented PMs, like, that is really, really good for your hiring funnel. And I think you'll see a lot of companies investing in being a little bit more visible in their own ways, or telling the story of their own organizations, their culture, their approach to craft more, because they know that it's valuable for bringing in the best talent, right? Like, look at all of the media arms that are popping up for every company, right? Like, A16Z has that new media fellowship thing or whatever, and Duolingo has invested in talking so much about their product management practices inside the company, right? Like, all of these, like, none of this is accidental. People want to see the ways in which amazing companies function on the inside, and your course is a function of that, where you are representing your company and you are bringing in talent for that. So yeah, I mean, especially for AI, it's such a good look, because if you're the first person teaching an AI for managers course, right? Like, that makes your company look really cutting edge, because you have figured it out and the rest of the companies are solving this exact same problem and they're looking for guidance for people like you. So that's my take on that.
What are like the biggest objections for why you've I mean, obviously don't name any sensitive companies or instructors, but like, if you were to pull out like a theme, are there any themes for why companies do not want their employees to teach a course?
It's really just privacy concerns. Like, if you are working on the cutting edge of new model development or something like that, like, I can imagine how you don't really want your instructors talking too much about the problems you're solving internally. But for the most part, it really is, it is a less common objection than you would think. And it is primarily related to like legal concerns and things like that. So
Yeah, another objection that I've heard, I don't know how real it is that just CEOs or executives worrying that that person is like dividing their focus too thinly, and maybe that's setting a bad precedent for other employees. So like, oh, like, this person is like not fully committed to the company because they're spending, call it 10 or 20% of their time teaching, which, by the way, I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, I think just, in fact, a lot of people do other things outside of work. That person is just choosing to do that thing.
yeah.
But yeah, and I think that, I mean, those companies are getting literally marketing for free, right? Like, we've seen those posts of like Anthropic. I think they were just hiring someone for like 350 grand to just write on LinkedIn. I think the CEO, or like the CEO of PayPal hired someone for 400K to like just write on their LinkedIn. Like, these are very valuable like distribution channels that all of a sudden these companies get to tap in for free, which I think you cannot ignore.
Yeah. I mean, two things. Like, number one, I think that in order to teach, you have to be really good at what you're doing. And so, and again, I do think teaching makes you better at what you're doing. So I think there's always that angle. And then I think, honestly, like, it's kind of a hard separation to draw, because if I were spending 6 to 10 hours a week woodworking, nobody could say anything about it, right? And it's specifically because I'm teaching this thing that happens to be a stream of income. But the irony is that this is probably going to make me better at my job than woodworking is. So I think it's kind of like a tough balance. And I do think it's very like culture dependent, right? Obviously, like, every CEO and every management ladder has like a different take on it. But I think that a lot of the buzziest, most well-known leaders in various spaces are people who have spent time codifying their knowledge in some way, right? Like, I was looking at Super Me recently because they came out of stealth yesterday or today.
Yeah.
Huge fan. Shout out Casey and Ludo. But basically, like all of the experts that they are tapping for their early Super Me profiles are people who have built a lot of credibility by sharing their knowledge publicly, right? Like I looked at that list and I was like, wow, every single one of these people I probably pitched for Maven, but also they're like incredibly, incredibly good at what they do. And they're known for being very good at what they do. So I just don't think there's much of like a, a contradiction there as people tend to think. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to tell people like have those concerns, like maybe you should go somewhere where they value you more and they can like see eye to eye. I mean, it's a little bit like extreme, but I feel like there's probably a company out there that really like admires what you do and what you're building.
Totally.
And ask for forgiveness, not permission is another thing.
That unfortunately is a personal favorite of mine, but it's not everybody's thing. But yeah, I mean, like, again, like the operator generally knows whether it's going to be cool or not, right? Like, obviously, if you're working somewhere where it is truly 996 and there's some, like, you're missing out on a generational moment if you're not in the office on Saturday, like, okay, fair, right? Maybe this isn't your priority right now. That's totally okay. That makes total sense. But I think that for the average person, like, they should be investing time in writing down what they're learning, in thinking through the practices that are working for them anyway. And so, it's just a short leap, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so let's say there's an initial binary each person thinking about teaching has to cross, which is like, will I get fired for doing this or not? Or like, will I be able to keep my job or not? Or will I be violating some NDA or not? Right. So like, let's just assume that those concerns are mitigated and they're unblocked legally and in those sense. What would almost be, I think the next gate in their decision would be, do I think there's demand for this, or do I think, is that the next one?
Yeah, actually, I think that's the first one. I think very few people run into the company thing for what it's worth. And I think the biggest barrier for most people, the thing that's hardest to overcome is like, what should I teach? Like what's going to sell, what's going to be valuable? Like what should I teach? And for that, I have a couple questions, right? I always tell people, like, you probably have some opinion on what really matters, right? Like one huge benefit of being an expert in your space is that you have all this perspective from all of your past experiences. You've tried things, you've seen how they worked out, you've seen people get promoted, you've seen people not. And you have enough data points and time scale to sort of pattern match and say, okay, here's what ended up mattering of all the things. Here's what was buzz, here's how the role has changed in the time that I've been in it, and here's what I think is going to matter going forward, or what's always going to matter. And I think that is super valuable for students, right? Like people want to know what matters. People want to know from you, from your expertise, from your experience, like what's actually worthwhile for me to pay attention to. And I think that that's something that is a little bit counterintuitive, where as a student, I don't know that the student always knows what the right question to ask is, or that's why the search function is sometimes useful, but not always, where it's like, sometimes they don't even know what the question they're asking is. Sometimes they don't even know what they're missing, right? They want your opinion on what's going to matter. So I think being really opinionated about what matters, what good looks like, is important. I think, a couple easy ways to back into that is like, who are the 1% of the people that you've ever worked with, right? What made them the 1%? What does that actually look like? So many people are looking for examples, like tactical examples of like what good looks like in any given function. And then, I think that like differentiators are always important in terms of, what have you noticed across, what's a common pitfall? What have you noticed across the people who rise above? Yeah, those are some like topic guidance, like pieces I give people.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's also true for you, Ben, but I get pinged a lot of like, hey, like I'm thinking of starting writing on LinkedIn, but I don't know where to start. I feel like the advice that you just shared, I probably use different words, but pretty much this is the same thing, right? Of like, I think it just relates. Like it's, you're trying to mine. Okay, what are some things that are helpful for people?
Yeah. I'm gonna put Mark in the hot seat for a sec. So Claire, because we're talking about how to choose, how do you know which topic to teach or whatever? So let's just play a little game, okay? So Claire, you said, I'm looking for people that could teach a writing with AI course, and Mark has so many thoughts on writing with AI and so many systems for writing with AI. So how can Mark determine whether he might want to or might be able to teach a course around writing with AI? What are the kind of questions he should ask himself?
Great question. I mean, number one, I would just look at the pattern of the inbound that you're getting, right? Like, are people already coming to you because they want your guidance on this topic? Like, that's a great indicator. Also, for people who are like full-time operators and thinking about this, like, I would think about what makes you uniquely good at what you do. You know, like, I know that by the time you've worked for 10 or 15 years, there have been patterns in what people say that you are exceptional at. You probably, I mean, you should know, right? And I think that's always a great area to lean into, where like, if you are a particularly gifted facilitator, or if you are like exceptionally data driven or something like that, whatever. And then I also think that you should consider whether it's something you want to be known for, because a lot of times, you know, your course is going to end up being like, A, you're talking about yourself as an expert in the space, which means that that is going to be how people remember you in some way. And so if you think to yourself like, oh, I want to have future advising, consulting, you know, engagement opportunities around this topic, this is like the type of problem that I want to help people solve in the long term. Also, like, doesn't even have to be the long term. I'm being a little dramatic about that, but like, it's a good heuristic, right? I think that's a really great way to think about it. And then lastly, like, yeah, do some demand validation, right? Like, if you run a lightning lesson and you get a really high volume of signups, like, that's great. If you post like once or twice about it and you see a lot of people engaging about it, like, that's also a great indicator. So yeah.
That's such a good point. The one of like, do you want to be known for that thing, or do you want to be doing that thing for, call it 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think I see so many people that like, you know, start to build an audience or on a topic, and I'm like, that's a very good topic, but like, is that really what you want to be doing like for the next 10 years? And I think, you know, it's in a way, the dangerous side of that advice too is that it's such a daunting question that it almost kind of procrastinates like getting started in a little bit.
Yeah.
But and I think that what I tell people is like, you know, it has to be the Venn diagram of like something that you want to be known for and something that you really enjoy. Because I think if you really enjoy doing that thing, the likelihood that you're going to continue doing it in the future is pretty high, because, you know, whatever feels to you like play probably doesn't feel like play for anyone else. And, you know, I think like in business and in content, the way you win is you just stay in the game longer than the rest.
Yeah. I also, like, you're right. Like, I think it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself to say like, oh, what do I want to be known for forever? But I think that like, it can generally be a much broader thing. You know, I know that your course topic itself should be pretty niche, but when I talk about like the way that I know people in my head, right? Like, I have a short list of people, for example, who are well known for being excellent at PLG. I have a short list of people who are, you know, CMOs at hyper growth companies. I have a short list of people who are marketplace guys, right? And that's all I mean, where it's like, it's still pretty broad, but it's like, if somebody has a question, is like, hey man, my company's really struggling with X, Y, and Z. Do you know anybody who can help me solve this problem? You want to be like an easy and memorable person for them to be like, oh yeah, like so-and-so actually either teaches about this or is like really good at this type of problem. Like, you should chat with them. Like, you should see what they think. And yeah.
By the way, this is the same exact thing that I noticed when I was running product at Continuum, because it was a marketplace for fractional executives, and the same exact advice applies for what helps people find traction and land clients for their fractional practice. Is they need to occupy a very specific niche in people's mind, so that when that problem comes up, they think of them. It's almost like no different than you want them to think about whether it's a course or whether it's advising or whether it's fractional, whatever. You want to carve out that niche. I agree. And I'll be honest, like, I was definitely worried about cornering myself into like product sense and analytical thinking interviews. And I think what's been pleasantly surprising to me is that by starting so niche, I've been able to kind of branch out. Like the stuff I'm doing with Marc on Insider Loops right now, for example, is a natural extension of that product sense and analytical thinking course, the co-pilot. Now we're just doing basically like helping people land PM roles at top companies in general, right? And so I'd say like starting niche doesn't corner you in the way that I might have initially been worried about, because it's just a wedge and you can always expand your wedge outwards. Totally. It's just basic startup advice.
Yeah. I think that's always true, right? Like, you know, even if you're known for PLG with one specific like company motion, right? Like, I think there are so many other examples where you can say like, I helped this type of company grow, and then I also helped this type of company grow. And like, every situation ends up being so specific that you just categorically, you know,
it's kind of like, if you were to apply this to like, just continuing this game for a second, I know we'll start wrapping up in a few minutes here, but if Mark was like, I'm going to teach a course on like how to write with AI, and specifically it's going to be so niche, it's going to be like how to write LinkedIn posts with AI or something, that could naturally expand itself into like writing in general. Or like communicating better with AI. It could also expand itself into like other content formats, like
Totally.
you know, how to like how to like basically podcast, how to run a podcast, because podcasting and writing for us are so connected. So there's all these different ways people, I think, could expand that if they want.
Yeah. And eventually you can even grow that into like how to market in the age of AI, right? Like how to use AI in the places that matter, and then how to build like a full, like one person marketing team where you're inputting taste and human judgment in the places that matter. And the rest of it, you're using AI to accelerate yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one final question there. So, okay. So I'm sold. I think I'm the right person to teach this course. What is the first experiment that you would have me like set up to be like, okay, like what should I measure to know, hey, there's enough demand here, there's enough pool, I should start putting together a course. And let's pretend I have maybe 2,000 followers on LinkedIn. I have no Substack. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm working with.
Yeah, it's a good question because I do like tailor my advice depending on what the person's existing landscape looks like. I would say, yeah, you should definitely try posting on LinkedIn and just saying like, hey, you know, I've been thinking about this topic a lot. I've got, you know, this is something I've been doing recently. I've gotten the sense that there are a lot of other people who are working on this. Here's how I approach this. Like, if this is helpful, like, let me know. I'd love to chat about your process, right? So just putting like an all call out there and saying like, hey, this is something I'm thinking about. Like, are there any other people out there who are also experiencing the same problem? And just kind of building like, oh, okay, you know, this guy's talking about this thing. I think running a lightning lesson is pretty much a universally low risk thing to do, just because it's free. It's really short, right? It's like 30 minutes, 20 of which can be you sharing your ideas. And then the other 10 minutes can be open Q&A. And you're basically just getting a sense for like, A, are people going to register, right? Are people going to come to this like free thing I'm offering? And then B, when people do come, what's the engagement like? What does the resonance feel like? Like in the room, can you feel the energy? So I think the lightning lesson is honestly the safest bet for a lot of people. It's also like a good test to see if you like the format that it requires. You know, I think there are some people who love writing and don't want to speak at all. And if that's the case, like maybe not for you, but you know, if you enjoy being in front of a room and like talking to people and getting that one-on-one interaction, like I think that's a really good indicator for like, hey, this could be a format that really works for you.
So it sounds like anyone in the world can create a lightning lesson in Maven. Like it's not like you have to be like pre-vetted, or do you have to kind of have the Maven team to be like, oh, I like you a little bit.
These days we are application only, and we're maintaining a bit of a quality filter. So in order to be actually listed on Maven's marketplace, in order to be discoverable, you have to cross a threshold of signups. But you know, if you're interested in running a lightning lesson, you could just email claire@maven.com and we'll see what we can do.
Nice.
Yeah, I cannot speak highly enough of the Maven team. I've been super impressed with everything you guys are doing, the transparency that you have with instructors on what's working, there's so much cross-pollination of learning and best practices. And I think there's so many difficult trade-offs that the Maven team has to make. And also you guys are so small, what, like 20 people?
I think we might have just hit 21, but yes, we have been a 20-person team for a long time.
That's something nuts. A lot of people don't know about Maven is how small the team is and how tenured the team is. I think almost everyone I talk to at Maven's been there for like multiple years at this point.
Yeah, we've got great retention and we are much smaller than you think. So, you know, a lot of the things that people think are going on, like there's a human reading whatever you're putting out into the universe.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm really grateful for everything that you and the team have done for me and getting my course to the place where it's at. I do have a pretty big evolution coming, more to come on that, but supporting, you've helped me really think through this big evolution. You, Rachel, Kennedy, a lot of the people on the team have been incredibly generous with your time. And as always, if people want to learn more about the courses and you're listening to this, I'm happy to also be a sounding board. If you want to shoot me a note, I'll do my best to be helpful. Reaching out to Claire and the team is going to be your best way of actually getting in.
I'm also excited. I'm going to be in 2 lightning lessons I think in the next 3 weeks. I don't know what took Ben so long to invite me, but finally made
I think we have 2 next week.
Yeah, 2.
I guess when we publish this, it'll be the week before.
That week. Yeah.
Man. Back in the early days, I would have been actually emailing Ben being like, hey, you should invite your friend Mark for a lightning lesson. Why aren't you doing that already? But we're a little past that now.
Yeah, we've got two ones we're really excited about. We're gonna have Jacob Bank from Relay come and do how to leverage AI agents to 10x or how to use AI agents to 10x your leverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be a great one. And then we're doing one with Annalise Capazzi about
Mm-hmm.
how to really leverage recruiters during the interview process.
Oh,
And I
very
think both of
cool.
those are going to be part of the career growth series that are going to be promoted next week. So I'm pumped about those.
Nice. Very excited about that. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure working with you, Ben. It's been so much fun working with your whole little squad as well. It's probably like our favorite part of being on the courses team is getting to work with people like you and Tal and Colin and Aman and seeing you all grow from the ground up. I remember very clearly when I first found Tal and when I first found you and Colin as well. And it just like feels very great to watch you guys grow. It's really, we take it very personally.
Yeah, it's a great crew.
Awesome. Well, in closing, last two questions. We touched on this a little bit. One, the first question is if people listening want to hear more about what you're thinking about, where can they go to read or listen to what you've got to say, Claire? And the second is how can they be helpful to you?
Yeah, I mean, number one, obviously maven.com, come teach, come apply. If you want to reach out to me directly, claire@maven.com. I will probably be doing some more public writing about what we've seen work and what we're looking for and, you know, what the patterns of success are. So claireisworking.substack.com, you can find me there as well. And then in terms of, you know, what we're looking for, some topics that I'm personally really excited about, you know, AI for basically every job function, both in terms of like how the role is going to shift based on AI. So for example, like new design patterns for AI, right? Like basically like how is the actual product going to change as a result of AI? And then also how are you using it in your role? So AI for finance, AI for customer success, like all of it, come talk to me. And then, yeah, new AI enabled roles as well are really interesting. We have a couple go to market engineering courses. I think that DevRel is going to be really, really big because there's so many more companies who need to leverage those storytellers to reach a technical audience. Same with comms in general. Like I think a comms course would kill. So yeah, and just in general, like I think this is something that was really resonant for me, Ben, in this panel that you and I were listening to the other day, but somebody mentioned, you know, they were hired as a product leader at an AI native company. And the recruiter asked, like, hey, what was surprising to you? And he said, actually, 90% of my role is still the same. Like, you still have to just be excellent at the core product work. So if you are excellent at the core product work and you want to teach other people how to do that as well, I still think that is really, really important, you know, in spite of AI. So
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was great. And Mark's going to reach out to you about his writing course.
I heard that. I heard he was going to do that. Very excited.
I'm ready. Amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Fun, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.